All right, let's continue talking about Porter's five forces. So last week we did the buyer power, supplier power, rivalry, entry barriers, and then substitution. So you have that list. I showed you how you can use Chat GPT or Copilot to get a good research, or use Merchant Online. I need to show you how to use Merchant Online, but I haven't gotten back into it. So this next section, the five forces is talking about, is the industry good or bad? Is it high growth or is it going to be slow growth? This next part of his analysis is what he calls generic strategies, which you think would be more paper 3. It's talking about individual companies, but you need to have some thought of this in the first paper. He says there's a few type of firms. First, there are cost leadership firms, and there's differentiators, and then there's focus. So you want to ask the question, does your industry have a cost leader? Is it pretty obvious there's a cost leader? Their expenses are lower, their turnover is much higher, they're known as being cheaper. So it's hard to say between Walmart and Costco. It's one of those is the obvious leader. Obviously, you know, Walmart is the cost leader versus, say, a Target. In the airline industry, we used to think of Southwest, but that's not necessarily true anymore. Now it's more Ryanair. So there, you can have a new cost leader come in. Southwest has been struggling of late. So you can't have changing positions. But is there an industry? Some of your industry that doesn't really make sense at all. I don't know between TJ Maxx and Ross, if one of those is a cost leader or not. You can have a couple that are a little more focused. But our cost leader, to really have leadership, the product quality can't be so low as to give them a reputation for low quality. They can't just go bottom of the barrel. Porter argues, and I don't know if he still agrees with this, but an industry can only have one cost leader. I think you can think of some industries where, you know, there seems to be a couple of players that are pretty heavy on the low cost. So one of the things Porter talks about that I think is really, really important is, once you define these firms, we're going to talk about it with Moats as well, is once you define your firm, especially for paper 3, where should they be doing their capital expenditures? Where should their CapEx be? For a cost leader, it should be on keeping their costs down. It should be on productivity, technology, those things that keep it cheap. So Walmart, Costco, we used to think Southwest, not so much anymore. I mean, Ryanair is pretty amazing entity, how big and it is, as fast as it did it. And have any of you ever flown Ryanair? Does it feel as cheap as, say, some of the ones here in, I can't think of names of them right now. I've flown Southwest. Southwest is changing their rules about seating and some other things, you know, so it's interesting. Spirit Air, I guess some of you are probably flown on Spirit Air. You know, so you can kind of tell when you have a cost leader just in the nature of the product. Differentiation is probably where you'll spend a little more time in paper 2 in your industry analysis, is how did the industry differentiate itself between each other? What's the key for telling one versus the other? Porter argues, and I think this is probably true, that differentiation always costs money. You're not going to differentiate yourself without spending more money. So what you got to do is you spend more money, but that allows you to increase your price by enough to offset that. So that gets almost back to that value chain management. Where do they excel in the value chain management, and how much does it cost for them to do that? Where does that advantage come from? So it's hard to think of a firm has this major advantage, but they just kind of got it gifted to them without any additional cost expenditure that they've got to do. So you can differentiate your product so that you can charge a premium price. The differentiation can be the product quality, can be its durability, can be features, functionality, can be the service. It can't just be brand image. Brand image is expensive because you have to do a lot of advertising, but it can be something that is valued by the customer, they're willing to pay more for. You just can't have that cost be more than what you can charge. You got to make sure, and in most cases, you know, it costs you an extra $2, you'll make an extra $3. Usually it expands your margins. And so differentiation, you must invest to preserve that uniqueness of the product. So whatever makes your company unique, how are they reinvesting in the firm to maintain that uniqueness? So you can distinguish the product itself. So one of y'all is doing Adobe. So you might ask the question, who is Adobe's competitor? When people are buying Adobe product, what are they choosing between? How do you distinguish between Adobe and that competing product? Is Adobe better? Is the other product cheaper? Are they equal, but they differentiate in different ways? The marketing, you think about a Nike and the type of marketing they do, that costs them money. Nike spends about 10% of its revenues on marketing. That's pretty expensive, but so does Adidas. Or how do y'all say Adidas? Y'all say Adidas? Okay, yeah, I always, in the UK, it's Adidas. It's like, the first time I heard it, it's like, what are you talking about? A shoe company named Adidas? I never heard of it. So marketing can be important. Service, that was USA's thing for years and years and years. Now in the technology world, it's not quite as important as it used to be, but service. Think about the service. Don't just accept your firm saying we have the best service in the industry. Find some way that you can distinguish that. So I'm amazed with Costco. A few times I went in Costco, this one guy at the door, my word, he was like doing 6 things at once and treating me extremely well, checking my card, being really friendly, giving this person a card. I mean, that guy loved this job. How does Costco do it? Is it training? They pay their employees better. It seems to be better. I'd rather work at a Costco than a Walmart. I don't know about you. It seems like it'd be a much nicer place to work. Chick-fil-A has that reputation. I don't eat fast food anymore, but they're very polite. How do they do that? I was talking to a Chick-fil-A owner, and I was shocked at how much time he put into hiring employees. Like this is a minimum wage job, right? Yeah, but we're on my 3rd interview now, and I just want to. It's like, what are you talking about? McDonald's is, are you breathing? And come on in, we got room for you. But McDonald's, I mean, the last time I went to McDonald's, they had a kiosk, and I didn't know how to use the kiosk, and no one would look at me behind the counter. So I finally just started pushing buttons randomly. Very horrible service. But does Chick-fil-A get that without a cost? It has to cost them more money, doesn't it? Does Costco, we know it costs more for Costco because they do pay people more. But how do you do this? So the Chick-fil-A guy said that's really, really important. We have a restaurant in Costa Rica where the service quality is not where we really like it because they're cooks. They want to be cooks. And we're trying to tell them, no, when someone walks in, greet them, give them a menu, you set them down. Well, that takes more time. You have to trade. There's more cost. So think about that. Service is not something you just say, hey, have good service, treat everybody well. You've got to put some money into it. Location, convenience, access, including online. What does it cost to do that? We know McDonald's is exceptional at placing their stores in the exact right place. Chick-fil-A is real picky about not having more than one Chick-fil-A in a certain area. They protect their franchises really, really well. Subway sticks franchises wherever they want to, and they'll have Subways right in Starbucks too. Seems like you've been in New York City where you're sitting at a Starbucks, looking at someone in a Starbucks across the street. That doesn't make your franchises very happy. Starbucks, I don't think franchises, but location can be important. What does that cost you? Brand identity, that's great if you have it, but how do you maintain that? How do you invest so you create that loyalty? The bike company, I can never remember the name. What is the name of that comes starts with a P? The stationary bike exercise people. Peloton, yeah. Why can't I never remember that? Peloton. So their bikes are pretty expensive. So then they said, well, let's do a cheaper product so we can get more people in. Well, that's really dangerous. I think Tesla's got the same issue, having a cheaper Tesla. If you got people spending whatever a Tesla is, $80,000 because they want to be seen in a Tesla, and now you see $40,000 Teslas going around, what's that going to do to 80,000 people? Are you going to lose that loyalty? So you got to be careful as you come down. So Ferrari, is Ferrari trying to make cheaper cars? They have no incentive to. Why? Because that's not their business. They don't want anyone, what does a Ferrari even cost? A couple of $100,000. You don't want to sell a $50,000 car if you're Ferrari. That just doesn't make sense. So I think Tesla is taking some risk by coming down market because of that brand identity and loyalty. And then exclusivity. you're first to market, you have patent rights, those things that can differentiate you because you're the only one with the product. That can certainly be there. But think about your industry. There can be others of them. I always make it simple. Why do you use that product instead of another product? What is it that distinguishes them? It can just be location, just because it's closer to your house. You go to Walmart instead of going to Target. But what other reason are there? Would you drive, like when I was in East Coast, I think it's called Wegmans. It's a grocery store. So I'm with my friends and we got to go grocery store shopping. We drive by 2 grocery stores. Like, where are we going? There's a grocery store. No, we're going to Wegmans. It's like, why are you driving an extra 20 minutes? They loved it. They thought it was the greatest place ever. There were people, I may have told you, who were these high school students taking their dates to Wegmans. It's like, what in the world's going on? And they sell the stuff for like $10,000. Some of these, what do you call truffles? I don't know what a truffle is. Any of y'all ever had a truffle before? They sell those, but they also sell. It's like, I looked at it. They had a covered parking garage. The employees were really nice. It was just really clean and special. And it's like, their prices have got to be higher than the competition. They said, no, their prices are pretty good. It's like, okay, I don't get it. I got to figure out this company, but they're not public, so I can't get anything on them. But I was like, if someone's driving extra 20 minutes to go somewhere, passing competition, and they're providing this incredible service and their prices are good, there's something, they're contradicting everything Porter says. That's a firm I want to research, but then I can't research it because they don't have any data. Have y'all heard of Wegmans before? Have you? Are they pretty good?
Back when I'm from the East Coast, so there's this Wegmans, there's like 20 minutes, so me and my friends would always go there all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was, but they look more like they cost more. It's a more expensive business, but somehow maybe they're just making a lower return on equity. All right, so there's your Porters. So you do the 5 courses. So what you as a team need to do, your team of 3, definitely do buyer and supplier, and then pick between barriers to entry and rivalry within the industry. So get 3 of them in there. Your larger teams do all of them and try to add something else. Be real careful on the macro. So on buyer power, you definitely want to talk about the demographics. Look at who your customers are and what's going on with that. On supplier power, talk definitely about any raw materials, talk about your employees on that area. So, get some economic data in there. Remember, economic is, you can look at the history, you can look at where it is today and talk about where it's going forward. So if you're doing cotton because you're doing apparel, what have cotton prices been? That's pretty easy to do. You can pull that up historically, see what cotton prices have done versus synthetics or whatever. And then where are the prices today? And then what are expectations? Who produces cotton? What are those countries like? Is there sweatshop issues with those producers? Is it concentrated or is it pretty well spread across 10 different countries, or is it all in 1 or 2 countries? Those are the kind of things you're looking for. So as you do your project plan, so everybody on the team has something significant to do it in those terms. All right, before we get into, well, and then on the generic strategies, think about the generic strategies of how you can fit that in a paper too. Does your industry have a cost leader, and then how does it differentiate between players? Sure.
So either barriers to entry or
Rivalry within the industry. Yours is probably gonna be rivalry within the industry, I would think, but yeah, I'm not sure what the barriers would be. So let's look at a paper. I like to use Bond's paper because he kept it pretty close to the template. So the first thing to do is define the industry. So define the industry can mean all kinds of things, but just define what they do. Make it real clear. These are stores like a Ross. I don't think Ross produces clothing. It's possible that they do, but they buy clothing from some other people, put it in a store, and they sell it to the market. So think in terms, what is the industry? Do they have retail outlets, or are they B2B? They're a business that sells to other businesses. Fully defined here. So he's doing Costco. So he's making it very specific to the large discount retailer. So I think that's what we did for our consumer stores, was discount stores. Talks about what products they sell. That can make a lot of sense. Obviously we're talking about groceries here as well, so that changes the game somewhat. He makes it clear who is included, who's not included. And then he gives examples of big players. So he included Amazon in here. had a list of the products. He found some good statista, or this is market line actually, that shows how the industry is broken out. So you might want to say, hey, we're really focused on this part of the industry, not these other parts. So maybe he's kicking out Home Depot and Lowe's because that's too specialized. After that, it's kind of your decision if you're going to do kind of a history of the industry. You can think in terms of life cycle. Is this a mature industry? Is this still a young industry? Where does it come from? Who started this industry? How did it start? But don't go overboard on history. I don't need a 200-year history of whatever, clothing, and 300 BC, we wore the, you have to go back. So you're looking for what contributes to understanding the growth of this industry. He talked about COVID. That's probably not necessarily here, but when he wrote it, that was high. And then a lot of times people will do the major players. Be careful here that you're not talking about your company or your 3 companies or 4 companies or whatever you're doing. You're talking about the entire industry, but who are the major players? So for the retail side, obviously it's going to be Walmart, Costco, and Amazon. That makes sense. Maybe Target. Here's where the differentiation comes in. If you have cost leaders, you have differentiators. You put Kohl's and Target in one group. This is the place you can define that. So you're trying to help your reader understand what is it that you're writing about. We have had several papers where they'll spend a little time defining the major players. I think this is a bit overkill. I actually prefer if you could somehow do a table. I think that's stronger. Here's the major players, total revenue, major product lines that they sell or something, or some differentiation. How is this one different than the others? That I think is much better than 2 or 3 pages of verbiage on businesses. It's really too much for the reader. But you'll see that in a lot of these examples. And there's 2 whole paragraphs just on Walmart. A couple of paragraphs on all of, so it's just a little bit much. But make sure your reader knows what industry are you doing. So when they read that, they know so-and-so is included and so-and-so is not included. It should be pretty straightforward. So do you think Macy's is included in this? Nordstrom's in here? Probably not, right? Doesn't fit this category, and he should make it obvious there. You can definitely do this. I do like very much doing market share. Now, if you have an industry where it has a lot of private players, that becomes an issue. Like insurance is so tough because a big chunk of the insurance industry is not public. But the easiest way to do market share is just go to Bloomberg and get the revenues, or go to Capital IQ, just get the revenues. Statista might have this as well, and just a pie chart of who are the major players. I think even more interesting to me is to do it over time. So 5 years ago, here's what the market share is. Here's what the market share is. Is there a change? Is Costco picking up market share from Walmart? Are there some new players coming in and are picking up market share? What are Dollar General and these other smaller players doing? So that would be an interesting take. So try to find some way now, like with apparel, that's going to be tough because there's so many of them. So that's a little bit tougher. But if you can do something like this, industry, see, this is exactly what he did. Industry in 2016, industry in 2021. He got this from Capital IQ just by bringing in the revenues of those players. He has some interesting quotes in here. All right. Any comments or concerns on the intro? It took him a couple of pages, probably been less if he hadn't spent so much time on the individual company.
What example paper is this on?
It's Costco.
Costco?
Yeah. This is Bond's paper. Yeah, I saw him in New York last year and told him, hey, I'm still using your paper. After that, it's just Porter's 5 forces. He followed my instructions. He didn't say strong or weak. He said negative for industry, positive for industry. So just go through that. Now, when you go into typical Porter's, especially on Merchant Online, there's like under buyer power, there's like 15 things. You don't need to do those 15 things, but I would read through them to see if anything in there kind of catches your eye. Like, wow, we should talk about that. It's a really, really long list. Supplier power, really long list. Read through them and see. Don't do all of them. It's just way too much, but look through. So he covered switching costs and some other things. on the rivalry within industry. Obviously, switching cost is very, very low. You can just drive to another store. You talk about pricing strategies. I mean, you could. So for the apparel people, I'm not picking on them, but talking to Jared earlier, but I've never been to a Ross, I've never been to TJ Maxx, but I don't know if there's a difference there. Is one of those cheaper than the other?
Right, it was like, I feel like it's
That's the same. Doesn't TJ Maxx have the higher quality stuff that's kind of marked down? And what do? Are they buying, it's not used clothes, is it? They're buying stuff that's just out of season or whatever. So it's, that kind of stuff is kind of fits more in their supplier power, but that's the kind of stuff you want to understand. Is there a difference between Ross and TJ Maxx? Why are they both so cheap with their clothes? Is it a sourcing? What exactly are they doing? So you want to have some understanding on that. So threat of new entrants, heavy capital requirements. So you don't have to cover the ones he talks about, but there's a whole list of things you can look at and you look through and say, wow, this really applies to this industry. Merchant Online can definitely help you with that. The Chat GPT can definitely help you with that. Now, he goes a little overboard where he's talking individual companies here. I think that's too much. You could definitely say, for example, this firm, blah, 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 and make that as an example to explain what you're doing, but don't feel like you got to talk about all the major players throughout this paper. Leave that for your third paper. Here's a Statista, 100 retailers in US by retail sales. This one's a little confusing because he just did this earlier. So do kind of watch out if you're going to have the exact same chart twice, but from different sources that have different companies, it gets a little confusing. So how is this different than the one he just showed me before? So, be careful on that. So Brett, a new entrance, he spends quite a bit of time on that one. A lot. So that substitutes, most of y'all can ignore that, but think about it. This is where I get into that disruptive innovation. Is there an industry that could wipe out your industry? So, you think of online taking out Walmart and Costco, but we saw what's interesting is Costco. Let me show you something. Just a second. Is someone doing Costco in here? I don't think so. I gotta find something. I sent it to my Facebook account because I couldn't remember. I couldn't think of any other place to send it. Oh. These are really, really good little TikTok videos. Right. That's not it. All right, it's this one. So listen to this one. All right, so I think this is really interesting. If I were doing it, so one of y'all is doing Target, aren't you? Okay. All right, so I found this really, really fascinating. Target, Walmart, H-E-B, curbside pickup, home delivery. Costco says, no. We don't want people not coming into our store. That's how we get them to buy junk they weren't going to buy. So they're actually have the opposite. They don't want to do curbside. That's actually their strategy. And just think about it. I got people coming in to buy hot dogs because they're $1.50. People go, wow, how crazy $1.50. Yeah, you're going to buy something else. It's a very different strategy It's an interesting strategy. I love Costco. It sounds good. I haven't been to Costco forever, but so anyway, so think through these companies and how they differentiate each other. You say the trend is to do that. However, Costco that's not their trend. They're not doing curbside. They're not doing the online. Really, have y'all done anything online with Costco? Can you buy something online with Costco and have it delivered?
Yeah, you can.
You can. I mean, is that a major part of their business or?
You have to go pick it up and it's a whole process.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's an interesting thought. It could be a major failure in the end. I have another one on Netflix. Someone here is doing Netflix, maybe or not. Yes. I mean, I'll show y'all the one on Netflix. But Netflix is presenting to Blockbuster. They're about to go under, and they want Blockbuster to buy them out. And they say, buy us out for 50 million. And Blockbuster starts laughing. 50 million. We're not going to buy you for 50 million. What a waste. So they go away. Netflix survives. Blockbuster goes under. It's interesting. Why did Blockbuster miss out on that? Well, and he explains it very well in this video. I don't know why these videos started coming to me, but they're all really quite good. It gives you that insight of strategy, and that's what you're looking for. Is there a really major difference in strategy between these two companies, and could it fail if it doesn't work out? But anyway, threat of substitutes not a big issue for that. Suppliers. All of you will talk about suppliers, so make sure you do that, even if it's just employees. So do something like that. If you're doing restaurants, talk about minimum wage. Talk about the supply of labor, how difficult it is to find workers. Most fast foods companies I talk to, they're having a tough time finding good workers. It's just a tough business to be in. A lot of turnover. Now we're seeing all kinds of things like tipping. Have y'all seen tipping at fast foods? It's a bizarre thing. How's that impacting things? No, it's a bizarre world. So there's a lot to talk about with labor. Here he has, some charts that he found that, he didn't say the source of it, but on the supply chain, which is extremely important to a Costco. Not all of y'all will have supply chains because you're providing a service, not a product, but that's a pretty important concept for a lot of firms. And then buyers, you'll all do buyers. He says it's negative. Here, interesting here. I don't know why this is under buyer power, but this would be a great chart to show for your labor, starting hourly wages, average employee years with company. I don't know where he got that from. That looks like a really good chart, doesn't it? It'd be really, really interesting. Customer satisfaction scores. So the SKU, average SKU, we know that's much, much smaller for Walmart. I mean, for Costco. Yeah, this is a good chart. This I would have probably put up earlier when I'm defining the major players. That's a great thing to do for major players. I might have added their revenue, even their profit. So something that someone can look at and say, wow, I see, okay, Costco is limited SKU. Amazon sells everything imaginable. How do you manage that side of the business? That's pretty amazing. So, but he doesn't tell you where he got this, so you can't copy him on that one. I don't even see figure 17. Make sure if you have a figure in your paper that do y'all see 17? Yeah, it's in there somewhere, but he talked about it. Some of you can get into macro, not just demographics, but I saw an interesting chart on consumer credit and what that's been doing. That's kind of interesting. Personal income. So if you're selling a more durable good, a more expensive product like a car or jewelry or something, yeah, looking at the buying power. So the buying power of the buyer. So buyer power is, if we're in a recession, people are laying off from work. That's going to weaken your buyer. It's going to make it worse for the industry. So that type of data works really well for their market, the economic analysis. He specifically brought out the cost leader. You don't necessarily have to do that in this paper, but you could allude to it at the end, just saying this industry doesn't have a clear cost leader. It's very much an industry that's differentiated based primarily on service or primarily on product features, whatever you're going to say. And then you could use that as a way to bring Porter's five forces to an end. So he talks differentiation. And then make sure you have a summary, and the summary really needs to be focused on growth. This is the way I like to think of it, if our economy is growing about 5 to 6%, is this industry growing faster than our economy, about the same speed, or is it a decline? That gets back into the life cycle. This is rapid growth, stable growth, declining growth. Yeah, and then a summary chart on orders, I think is exceptional at the very, very end. I really, really like that. I think that gets him out of it, yeah. So he went about 10 pages. It's probably 2 or 3 pages excess because I think he talked too much about the individual companies. No, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just, you don't necessarily have to get that much into the individual company. So try to convert that. He did a great job of converting to the table, no question, but all that verbiage is just a little much. So questions on that example? I don't want to scare y'all with one other example, but I'll show it to you anyway. I was just talking to this guy a couple of days ago. He's working at Victory Capital. So again, industry definition and industry overview. You can find some charts in there to show what's going on. You know, Capital IQ is great because if your industry is very well defined, there's 6 major players. You can bring Capital IQ and bring in revenues. You can bring in profitability. You can show a pretty good history. You can even do like an area chart of the industry's revenues, stack each company. There's a lot of things you can do really fast in Capital IQ that are pretty impressive. His problem in doing Microsoft is Microsoft does so much, and he covered all of it. So his industry analysis is massive. It just goes on and on and on because he has to talk about each one of those pieces. That's why I discourage you. Is anyone doing Disney in here? I can't remember. I don't think so. Disney is a pain. You almost have to write 5 papers because it's so many industries. So it's just really, really tough. So what I recommend, if you have a company that really is on a lot of stuff, I would recommend the 80-20 rule. Try to find where the bulk of their business is, and then you can almost ignore maybe just a footnote. Oh, they're also getting into this or whatever. It's tough. Even Apple can get pretty tough because they're both hardware and software company. But yeah, so I don't want to scare you some of these papers, just to let you know he really got into it and covered it. His industry analysis is longer than a lot of students' school paper for the entire semester. Yeah, it's still industry analysis. Very good paper. He got a job based on this paper. He kind of freaked out his employer. So there it is, 29 pages, just like industry analysis. But that's Microsoft. Microsoft is a tough company to analyze because there's so much going on. NVIDIA is easier because it's, you know, semiconductors and it's primarily focused on AI. So you limit yourself. So if any of you are scared to death, you got a firm, it's just going to be, you know, now's the time to change before you get into paper 3. So if you feel you got a firm that's just too many industries, it's going to be tough. Hopefully all of your groups feel comfortable. You got an industry that's defined well enough that you're not going to have to go that much in depth in the industry analysis. He got all of his charts from Statista and Market Line. He built some of them himself. Do y'all use Market Line at all? You might check it out. Looks like it's got some good resources. Huh? Oh, okay. Yeah. That's. I don't know if he had access to it from work or what exactly. I was glad to see him as an analyst because he's an analyst. He actually enjoyed this. The reason the paper is so long is because he was getting into it. He just like, it's like, I got to do more. He was asking me questions like, I don't know what you're talking about. I had to go look up DRAM again. I can't remember. But he really got into it. So, all right. So what I want on Thursday, we might have a little group meeting. I want to have your detailed plan for paper 2. Who's going to do what? When is paper 2 due? So it's not due Friday, is it? When is it due? 27th of September. So 3 weeks. So yeah, have everything mapped out of who's going to do what, who's going to do buyer power, who's gonna do supplier power, who's gonna, the introduction, if you have 3 players, you got at least 5 parts, right? So you get that, break that up. So you at least have buyer, supplier, and one other one. You have the introduction and overview of the industry, then you have the summary. The summary you can probably all do as a group at the very end. I left it open in the syllabus how you present this. So I'm assuming you're gonna do papers, but if you prefer to do it as a PowerPoint that you present, we can talk about that as well, do it as a video, so y'all decide, but I'm assuming you want to do a paper, that's probably the easiest with the group. But think through how you want to actually build it. Anybody have any ideas on that? Papers should be the most straightforward, but I'm open to other approaches. So be aware, I want to see that. I want to make sure everybody's participating. Make sure you're participating. Because it can definitely seriously impact your grade on the paper. All right. Let's real quickly introduce economic moats. Economic moats are sources of competitive advantage. We refer to them as sustainable competitive advantage. What is a competitive advantage? It's you're getting above CAPM returns without fear of someone coming in and taking off. So if your cost of capital is 8% and the firm's making 10 to 12%, it's going to attract competitors. Like, wow, how are you making above market returns? And so what economic moat does is keeps that competition out. So that's how you figure out an economic moat is they have higher returns. They have positive economic value added. That's what we're looking for. A lot of people see that gets captured in brand value. For a lot of firms, brands are the most valuable asset that they possess. How do you account for brands? You can actually go out on the internet. And there are 2 major websites that do this. I don't see one yet, but yeah, I've got them written down somewhere, but I don't think brand finance is one of them. But there are some entities that actually value the brands, and they'll show what's Coca-Cola's brand worth? What is Google's or Alphabet's brand worth? What does brand mean? That means they have some competitive advantage that makes them more valuable than other companies. And what you're going to ask is how sustainable is that? So how do you calculate brand value? It's pretty straightforward. It's the present value of your higher margins. That's what brand value is. You have brand value, which means you get to charge more for your product in the competition because you have some advantage. The present value of that higher margin is your brand value. That's how brand calculations work. Could be a topic to think about in your paper 2, although this is really more paper 3 where you're talking about your individual company. So let me try just one more time. When I see it, I'll remember it. It could be brand finance because it's coming up a bunch. There is one other one that does it as well. So this is the 10 most valuable brands. Does that look familiar? That doesn't look familiar. This isn't tobacco. So this is only tobacco. I don't smoke, so I don't know any of those. This might be, it's something interesting for your paper 2, possibly if like 2 of your companies are on that list. These are all industries. Let's see if I can find one that. Here are the Nordic companies, Lego. So this is called brand finance. I can't remember the name of the other one. I'll try to find it. Brand rankings. It's a pretty cool website. tobacco, apparel. Here you go, apparel. So I'm kind of picking on apparel tonight for some reason. Yeah, they got a apparel 50. It says purchase for report. That doesn't sound good. But so brand is important. It's obviously incredibly subjective. I like it that we have two major firms that do this because you can compare their brand values and see. You usually see Apple and Google up at the top. You'll see Coca-Cola because its brand still has a lot of value, although it's waning. Coca-Cola used to be the most valuable brand. You see McDonald's, you know, there's kind of the obvious ones out there. But so what we're talking about is brand value. How is it created? And then how is it protected? How do you keep the competition out? And that's something called an economic moat. Have y'all used that term before? If you listen to business breakdowns, they use economic moat all the time. In fact, a lot of times they don't even say economic. They just say they got this moat. It's a pretty powerful moat. I give you an example to talk about AutoZone. AutoZone's moat is everything's in stock, massive inventory. And how do they manage that? It's pretty amazing how they manage that. But they have to have everything in stock because you drive in with a 2018 whatever, you need exactly that part. They have to have that part. You don't wait for them to order it for 6 months. So it just sits there. Fortunately, it's inventory that doesn't, go out of, spoil or whatever. It sits there and it's pretty safe. So that's an important, but that costs them a lot of money. So how do they manage that? So that particular discussion was really, really interesting. All right. So economic moat it's frequently used in finance by portfolio managers. It's something that gives them some unique pricing power. It is a structural nature of the business. It's something that's unique to that business, and it insulates the firm from competition. So I want to get into this. This is more paper 3. So on Thursday, we'll talk about planning for paper 2. We'll get into paper 3. This is your individual paper. So it gets a little frustrating this part because you're so focused on paper 2, but we got to start talking about paper 3. All right. So kind of hang in there. So we'll start here and get into it. So any questions on anything? If your team wants to meet with me, set up time with me, go through what you have so far, definitely do that. Earlier is better. You really want to get on the sick, especially this weekend, get moving. If we need a little more time for the due date, we can, but any extension does what to the rest of the semester? Crams it together. So that's not good. So, all right, we'll stop it there. So tonight we'll do a little bit of proof work, maybe halfway through the class. We'll explain that when we get there. Tonight I'm going to talk economic moats. This really applies more to paper 3, but there are some stuff in this that might apply to paper 2. So we'll cover it so you can think about it. Tiffany was asking about the generic strategies. So how do you incorporate that in? I think when I think about generic strategies, I think they fit really, really well under industry rivalry. Because you have a bunch of firms competing and there's intense rivalry. A lot of times differentiation will reduce that rivalry. If you have firms, they look different to their customers, the intensity of the competition is not nearly as much. You have a bunch of people competing on costs. Maybe like a Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Family Dollar, all those. It can be pretty devastating to an industry. So if you want to find a way to work generic strategies into Porter's, I'd recommend thinking about putting it on the industry rivalry. It's a good place to show. So you might say this industry doesn't show very intense rivalry because their products are very well differentiated. For example, so-and-so really focuses on service, or they have this particular audience they're focused on. That can get you out of that. Do you think about where they differentiate and try to think about that, how firms do differentiate themselves? If you can do it in a table or something like that, that can be really helpful under that part of the discussion. All right, so economic moats, we talked about brand. I didn't find the brand companies yet. I'll have to get that sometime, but you saw that one source. If you just do brand valuation, you'll find plenty of places that will give you some good information that may be valuable to your paper 1. I forgot on generic strategies, the last part that we didn't hit, I guess I have some slides kind of mixed up here for some reason, but he does talk about a focus strategy, which can be cost focused or differentiation focused. That just means your industry, your company is just really, really small, just one group of customers, you're not trying to broaden out the wider market. So some niche market, that niche market needs to be extremely well defined. There needs to be something about them that makes them unique so that you can identify them as a market niche. Really what you're looking for is there's some particular need that the big players are not meeting, and you're going to meet that really specific need and make sure they're taken care of. A lot of time focus companies mess up by trying to expand too quickly. And once they do that, then the big players start attacking them and try to taking them out. So they usually have to be pretty stealth, try not to expand too quickly. So if they expand too quickly, the satisfy demands, they can lose that niche market. The issue we had at USA is USA kept expanding from officers to enlisted and just about everybody. You start losing that focus, it can really harm you with that niche market. And then you lose your entire kind of distinctiveness. And then you're just another player competing with everybody else. All right, so economic moats, very similar, a lot of overlap with Porter's, but economic moats is usually focused on the company level, whereas Porter 5 Forces is at the industry level. But the overlaps are enough that I think you're going to see there is some parallels. So economic moats gives the firm pricing power, allows them to price more. It's part of the business and it protects them from competition. Probably the best way you can find an economic moat they should have positive EVA, economic value added. Remember EVA, economic value added, is return on invested capital minus cost of capital. That's what EVA is. If you have an economic moat, you should be making higher returns than your investors require. Remember, in economic theory, firms should be making their cost of capital because competition should come in and drive prices down to marginal costs. I mean, revenue down to marginal revenue. That should be the case. So a firm has consistent EVAs, then there's probably something going on well. I can't remember when we do paper 4, I think it is, like maybe it's paper 3. I can't remember if I brought EVA into that spreadsheet, but I might bring it in so you can see it. We did EVA in all of your models, and actually a couple of your models actually put weight on EVA. It is theoretically the most important thing you look at a firm, but because it's so subjectively calculated, it is often not so explicitly used. The EVA we're using was whatever Bloomberg was calculating, so we were stuck with their calculation. But that's essentially the definition of an economic moat, is a firm that can produce positive economic value added consistently. If you're doing that, you should be attracting attention. You should be attracting competitors. So how do you keep them out? It is an intangible asset. Firms with an economic moat are going to look expensive. They're going to look like you're overpriced because you've got something, not only you're making excess returns, but that's going to be in place for several years. So they'll tend to look expensive. They tend to be concentrated in certain industries. Warren Buffett is an economic moat person. No formula in finance tells you that the moat is 28 feet wide and 16 feet deep. That's what drives everybody crazy. They can compute things that are easy to compute, but they can't understand moats. But Warren Buffett is a moat person. I listened to I can't remember if it was one of the podcasts. A guy who used to work for Morningstar. He's an economic moat person, and I got a lot from him. I may show you some of his quotes here. All right, so one source of economic moats is very similar to the 5 Forces barriers to entry. That's patents, licenses, and exclusive distribution systems. So I don't know if any of y'all have industries that are heavily protected by patents. Maybe the chemicals guys. I can't remember who's doing chemicals. They may have patents. But I can't remember all of your industries. Usually retail doesn't have a lot of patent protection. Licenses, same kind of thing. Exclusive distribution systems, governments don't generally like that. We've had a lot of lawsuits between Samsung and Apple and Google, and there's a lot of these. Apple's gotten a lot of trouble on their applications. Google's gotten in trouble on some of their search engines. So these things are great protectors, except governments hate them, and so governments put huge restrictions on them. So these tends not to be a really good protection. Pharmaceuticals obviously is a big one that they get explicit protection because it costs so much to create new drugs. But even those wear out over time, although pharmaceuticals gotten really good at extending patents by making very minor changes to their products so they can get a new patent and extend it out longer. So I don't know, any of y'all think your industry patents and licenses and distribution systems is a major part of your analysis? Think about your companies. I mean, if you think of one, let me know. We can talk through it. It tends to be, well, obviously utilities have exclusive distribution systems because you can't, oh, I don't want to use CPS. I want to use somebody else. It'd be really tough for them to hook you up by yourself. But they're also heavily regulated by governments as far as what returns they can make. Essentially, governments tell them your EVA will be zero. That's essentially how they're priced. You will have no economic value added. It won't be negative, won't be positive, it'll just be zero. So it can provide a strong moat, but you're probably going to get sued, have some kind of way of governments coming after you. Patents, licenses, and contracts do provide protections, but it limits their ability to sustain returns above the cost of capital because there's so many restrictions placed on you. Governments don't like this. You've seen what's going on with Google in Europe. Google just is absolutely destroying Google. Same thing with Microsoft. So it's been rough for the firms, especially in technology, that are trying to sustain that. One many of you are going to talk about is this one. So brand identity. You need to think about this. Brand is pretty important. That's why I gave you the brand idea, brand valuation. So how does a brand create value? First, from the buyer standpoint, it gives the buyer status. The buyer just likes being seen with that brand. So I always use Tiffany's. I've only been in a Tiffany's once, and there's nothing in a Tiffany's I would ever buy. I wouldn't mind having a Tiffany's box. I always wanted to. I was at New York once, and they were selling Rolexes on the street for like $10. So obviously a fake, but I wanted to get one and put it in a Rolex box and give it to someone as a gift. I thought it'd make a really good white elephant gift. But obviously just the Tiffany box by itself is valuable. So it's a brand name that makes sense. Is Tiffany's jewelry really any better than any other jewelries? I don't know. I don't know anything about jewelry, but it's probably not as much better. But that status, if you create it, then yeah, that people will spend more just to have your name. Trust is important. The fact that you trust. So Moody's, definitely Moody's is a really good company, really interesting stock. They've proven themselves over time that their ratings are trustworthy. New rating agencies come along and it's just really hard to compete because you don't have that long history of showing that a AAA does a lot better than a AA than a single A. So Moody's has that trust. USA used to have that trust with their customers. Once you lose it, boy, it's tough to get back. I don't know if USA can get back there with that. R reduces search time. So you're in the store and you need some washing detergent. You can sit there in the aisle for 2 hours looking at all the boxes, doing some research, trying to figure out who's doing better. And you say, well, this detergent's better, but it costs 22 cents more. Let me figure out if that 22 cents is worth it. What are you going to do? You see Tide. I know Tide. I see the commercials. I'll just buy Tide. Saves you a lot of search time. You're not going to waste your time trying to figure that out. Kellogg's, you need this. I guess General Mills does Frosted Flakes. I can't remember who's who. You just grab that box because it's 10 cents more. Who cares? I was in HEB and a name brand was like half the price of the HEB brand, and I was not figuring out what that was. And I'm sitting there looking at it. Why is Heinz half as much as HEB? And then this lady walks up to me and she goes the same way. It's like, wait, what's wrong? I don't know. So guess what we did? We bought the Heinz. Obviously, we got the name brand for half the price. But usually you charge a little more with the name brand, and HEB should be the cheaper, don't you think? You're gonna pay more for HEB brand than a national brand. It might be the exact same product. I've noticed with HEB, some of their name brands are exceptional, some of them are quite horrible. So you test and try them out. They have a cauliflower pizza crust that's just incredibly good. It's like wonderful. It's so good. And they have Greek yogurt that I just dumped it all in the trash after I had took a bite. So I don't know how they figure out, but that's the buyer's time. Am I going to go in HB and try every HEB product? I don't have time for all that, but every once in a while I'll try one. I'll see if it's good or not. But we don't generally have that kind of time in our lives. We find something that works and we stick with it. Those are the three that create kind of brand identity. Definitely be thinking about these for your companies and your industry, especially on the people doing retail, all of the consumer discretionary and staples. Brand identity is a huge issue. Brand identity, one of the things on economic moats, this is really important for your third paper. If your firm has an economic moat, their CapEx, their capital investments should be focused on strengthening that moat. So if brand identity is your moat, your reinvestment better be on product recognition, which has really changed now because people are no longer advertising on TV and radio. You know, it's social media, it's TikTok and all these kind of things. So firms have got to get with the program to be able to get that brand recognition out there. Brand identity used to be one of the most powerful economic moats. It's become less so because we have all these influencers that are endorsing brands. I've seen some of them. I do the Facebook kind of version of TikTok. I have to admit, some of these restaurants people are visiting, they've got me sold to go do a 2-hour trip to go try the barbecue and wherever. Am I just being taken advantage? You know, I don't know. I look at what they're and say, wow, that looks really good. I don't know how much they get paid for that. There's a couple of guys from England that come over here and trying all this American stuff. Have you seen those two guys? Tried American barbecue. I was like, man, that's like the best food I've ever seen in my life. I want to just fly there today and try it. That's pretty powerful if you have people doing that. And it doesn't look like a commercial. It looks like someone just say, hey, am I having fun? Just let you know what's going on. So these influencers, some of them are really quite effective. And if you're not on the program with that, you're definitely, your brand can be tarnished. So how good is General Mills and Tide and Colgate on these type of things? You know, who knows? You can test and see. I don't have a TV anymore. Y'all have TVs? Who watches TV in here? Anybody? Y'all still have TVs? No, an actual plugged in NBC, ABC, Fox. Anybody do that anymore? Anybody have cable TV? So yeah, I haven't had TV in a very long time. So I don't know what commercials are on right now. I don't know where the political commercials are right now. I see on X a lot of them, but I haven't noticed it in other places. Many companies that have traditionally had brand recognition are starting to struggle. And it can use up a lot of capital to maintain it. I have a picture of Toys R Us there. Y'all probably don't know who that is anymore, but great commercials. You know, my generation could sing the Toys R Us jingle. So it becomes a big part of it. Why? Because we're all watching the same 3 network or 4 network television shows, the same commercials. We're just inundated as kids. Now you're getting hit from so many different angles. It's really hard to establish that. It gets quite expensive. If you work on the perception that your product is superior, you're going to have to really invest in advertising and keep that going. And that's where the celebrities you're hiring are pretty important. And that's where it gets dangerous because you have celebrities that do some really awful things and can really tarnish your brand. So it's not an easy, brand recognition is not an easy thing to maintain. This is when you want to watch the commercials for your firm. Where are they advertising? What kind of identity are they doing? Someone's doing deer in here, I think, maybe, I'm not sure. But deer, you know, it has such a brand identity with the agriculture community. How do they establish that? Is it through commercials? Is it through one-on-one salespeople? How do they actually create that? So you might ask, what are their what are their advertising distribution systems? Where are they advertising and how do they maintain that? All right, switching costs. We talked a little bit about this. This can come under buyer power as well, but how difficult is it for your customer to switch from you to another product? Extremely important. We mentioned Adobe before in that, so Oracle as well. I actually saw, so I bought some green tea yesterday and they paid me $1.84 to buy their tea. So I thought it was pretty good. Because she rung it in and I look up and it's $22 and said, wow, your tea's gotten kind of expensive. And she had hit some wrong button. And then she had to bring the guy over to fix it. When he fixed it, he gave me a credit to 2022, but then it gave him tax back. So he gave me $24 back. And then he said, just forget it. So I made like $2 buying tea. But when I was doing that, I noticed she had some hardware that had Oracle on it. I don't think Oracle is a hardware company, but that was an Oracle piece of hardware. So that creates the switching costs even more. It's not just the software, but it's actually the machine that you're using. I know if you go to USAA, man, Oracle is all over the place in USAA. It's really hard to switch. Salesforce is their big competitor, and how many inroads, but switching costs, you also have to think about the procurement manager. So if you're doing business to business, think about the incentives of the procurement person. They may want to switch to a new provider, but they don't get in trouble if they stick with who they have. If they switch to a new provider and it doesn't work out, they get in a lot of trouble. So a lot of people just from career protection, they don't want to switch. Why would I switch? What we have is working. I won't get in trouble sticking with what we have. I only get in trouble. So switching from Oracle to Salesforce, it's risky. Something doesn't work. All these accountants start complaining. You're in a lot of trouble. For you to switch, the competitor's product must be obviously superior, which means you have to invest to keep the quality of your product up to a certain level. You can't let the distance between you and the competitor get too wide. So you should focus your reinvestment on quality and functionality. You've got to stay, you can't just sit back and relax because people are using because they don't want to switch. At some point, your competitor is going to get good enough that your companies start switching. And what happens when a lot of companies switch to that procurement manager? Now the stress is on him and her to switch because everybody else is doing it. Now they feel like, wow, I look stupid because I haven't switched to Salesforce yet. So Oracle has got to invest. And Oracle has been a very challenged company. We have a few UTSA alums. They have a reputation. IT people tend to hate them because they're like, take us or leave us, but there's no one else to go to, kind of, you know, what are you going to do? We're the only game in town, so you're going to deal with us and we're going to make it miserable for you. I know at USA, have y'all heard of PeopleSoft? That name sound familiar? So when Oracle bought PeopleSoft, the IT people at USA, they were furiously mad. They were so mad because they hate Oracle. They love PeopleSoft. So Oracle had a pretty bad reputation. So Salesforce is probably trying to take advantage of it. Oracle's trying to change rep. I had one UTSA alum I had lunch with, and he said, yeah, our CFO says they're trying to change their reputation, not be quite so horrible to deal with. But you know, there are some competitors in there. We're seeing this now with Bloomberg and Capital IQ. I love that Capital IQ that is coming along. Finally, someone is competing with Bloomberg. I think that's great. I want to see that. I don't know if I said it in here, but I hope Amazon's out of business in 5 years because someone better comes along. And me as a consumer, I want firms to go out of business because a better player. I'm glad Blockbuster's out of business. I'm glad Netflix came along, and I'm glad Netflix is now seeing people on their back competing with them. I think that's wonderful for us as consumers. We should love that. So I have no trouble Oracle if they get beat out because Salesforce is better. That doesn't bother me at all. All right, here's the new one, the big one. It's platform network effects. You've probably been hearing a lot about that in your other classes. So a platform effect is anytime more customers improves the experience for everyone. You can think about Uber, you can think about Facebook, even Google. The more people using it, the better. That's not true for restaurants. A great restaurant. So I did fall for one of those advertisements. When I turned 50, I flew to Seattle to go to one of those restaurants. And because it had been on that documentary, there's like 50 people online. It's like, yeah. So I went to McDonald's and got a hamburger. So restaurants success is killer because you get crowds, long wait times. For Meta, for Facebook, success is great because you don't get on Meta because your friends aren't on there. And now your friends are on there, so you get on Meta. So Google did what? Google Circles? Y'all probably don't remember that. They tried it. How well did that work? Didn't work very well because no one was on it. Now you guys aren't using Facebook. I don't know what y'all are using. I can't figure it out. Telegram. I can't, there's so many. WhatsApp. I don't know what the difference in all these things. I'm on all of them because of you. So you guys got me in all of these. And I got to check 6 things instead of 1 thing. Why are y'all on WhatsApp? Is it a platform effect or is it because they're providing some service you're not getting somewhere else? You know, we love it in Costa Rica because WhatsApp we can use everywhere. You don't have, you know, it's really, really simple, works really, really well. Our Costa Rica trip this last time, we shared all our photos through WhatsApp. Made it really, really easy. Can't do that with other things. So, you know, is there an advantage there? But we can't all do it if we're not on WhatsApp. So you have that platform effect. You use it because you know people are there. So Uber, how does Uber start in a new city? How do you get drivers in a new city? What are the drivers going to say? We don't have any customers. What are customers going to say? You don't have any drivers. So what does Uber do? They essentially bribe drivers to join. Make it very lucrative for them to join because they need drivers. Without drivers, they're not going to get customers. So they got to create that network effect. Once they create the network effect, now they have a reputation. So once they go into the city, they can probably grow pretty quickly. But they have to create that network. So drivers won't join because there aren't passengers. Passengers won't join because there's no drivers. You're essentially have to go in and buy those people out to get them to join. Google's like that on Google searches, but Google's been really hampered because of antitrust. So now you're noticing that other things come up as the first choice now. Amazon, we tend to go to Amazon first. Are there competitors? I hear more people buying stuff from Walmart online and then going and picking it up. Yeah, there's some competition there. Do y'all even use eBay anymore? Anybody who in here uses eBay? Does it work for you? Is it pretty good? You buy stuff? Okay. Have you sold on eBay?
I never saw it.
Something. I've never tried it. So are there competitors now? You got Facebook, right? Market?
You know what Depop is?
No.
Yeah, that's the one case sell.
Oh, really? Your kids are selling stuff.
Say kids as in like party.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying you had like 3-year-olds selling stuff. Is it Depop? How do you spell it? Depot, depot.com. Yeah, I have to try it out as a public company. You know, interesting. I mean, eBay was the only place there for a while. It was like the online garage sale. But I've seen the Facebook ads there. I haven't really got into the Facebook market. But you know, they're kind of competing with each other. But initially these firms had it all because they're the only place that was, and so a new place has a tough place. So it's interesting how a new competitor comes along and actually has some success because you have to figure out some way to get people to come to you, and Google couldn't get it to work on circles. So it's almost a natural monopoly at times, but I'm glad to see some of them are seeing some competition come in. I didn't understand the TikTok phenomenon. It's kind of bizarre to me, but I have noticed YouTube and Facebook have both started that kind of thing as well. They're a little addictive at times. If you're really, really just bored and you need to kill 30 minutes. But I hate it when I get one of those and then I have to walk away and that same one is like 3 minutes and it just keeps playing again and again and again. You're like, just shut up. But it's somewhat addictive. How TikTok get the initial pull on that is interesting. So here you got to focus on the experience and the engagement. You got to get people using the product. And that can be a tough thing to do. You have to add new features continuously. I don't know what Facebook's added here recently, but add new features. You got to monitor competitor innovations to make sure they don't have some new advantage. And what most of these big firms are doing is just throw in the towel and just buy the competitor. You know, if you got $200 billion sitting on your balance sheet, just buy this competitor, get rid of them. So Facebook bought, is it Instagram? I don't know. I've never used Instagram. What does Facebook have? I can't remember.
Instagram and WhatsApp.
Oh, they own WhatsApp, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, my word. Okay. Yeah, so you buy these competitors, you hope the regulators will allow you to do that. Was it Microsoft talking about buying TikTok? I can't remember. So the US version of TikTok would be, a lucrative thing to get if TikTok can figure out how to get advertising to work on their platform. So this may affect some of you. Think about this. Platform effects tend to be technology, internet types of things, but they can be other places as well. So, think about it with your firms. They can be somewhat addictive. And then economies of scale, which is right out of Porter's five forces. But here we're going to expand it a little bit. So it does involve capital investments, so buildings. So economies of scale, firms with economies of scale tend to have high property, plant, and equipment. You'll see it on their balance sheet. We'll talk about that when we're talking about price to book versus price to earnings. So firms with large like capital investments, most of those those are capitalized investments that go onto the books. Auto manufacturers, refineries, those type of things, massive Intel with those fabrication plants. So that's not the only kind of that you have. There can be a scope advantage that could be considered an entry barrier. It's the knowledge of the firm that's hard to replicate because it's the employees that they have, that collection of employees they have. So you have a detailed knowledge. So NVIDIA is probably the best example of that. Some unique experience. You have it because you've been around a while. It's not just what you know, but it's how your entity interacts with itself. Gives you incredible, powerful advantage over others. So they call it a scope advantage. Certainly, AI is in that category. So the firm needs to focus on maintaining and building whatever that investment is. So you see Intel, I know Intel is having a horrible year. They're down like 60-something% this year, but they're still building these multi-billion-dollar fabrication plants. I don't know what happens to Intel if China attacks Taiwan. It could get interesting. I know the bill that Biden passed does provide some pretty good incentives for Intel to build in the United States, and also you're seeing some Taiwanese companies starting to build over here. You have to avoid obsolescence over time so that capital structure stays to your advantage. Firms that have an economic moat where it is actual capital, they're actually building buildings, building manufacturing sites. You really need to scrutinize their CapEx. In fact, all of you on paper 3, you need to scrutinize their CapEx. Where is CapEx going? Where are they spending that money? And if they have an economic moat, you need to figure out how that spending on that CapEx is impacting that economic moat. In fact, if you have an economic moat, ask how are they spending on it? What investments are they making in that? So here's the guy, Pat Dorsey. He's the guy from Morningstar. And he wrote a book. I was so excited about the interview. I thought it was a really good interview. So I bought the book, and the book wasn't all that good. Sorry, Pat. Because there's only one chapter on moats, and it was the exact same thing he said in the interview. So there's nothing new. And the rest of the book was way too simple. So I wouldn't recommend it. But he has a firm he started after he left Morningstar where their entire portfolio construction is to take advantage of economic moats, which means we need to be able to measure them. So what is an economic? Oh, you are supposed to stop me. We'll stop in 8 minutes. Or no, we go for what, 7:30, 8:45. We'll stop in 10 minutes. I'll give you all 30 minutes on your teams. So don't let me go over. Don't let me forget. All right. So he said, a firm that has a moat will have strong profitability. That's essentially that positive economic value added. That's consistently. That source of profitability is a source that can be protected from competitors. So you look at where's that extra profitability come from? And how are they keeping competitors out of their business? How much longer can they hold off these competitors? If it's a patent, then the patent runs out. Then what do they do? If it's capital expenditures, it's just, how obsolete are those plants going to get, and how much money they're having to make to keep the plants up to the staff up to whatever compliance. And then look at the industry's competitive structure. So your Port of Five Forces is part of what you're doing for these economic moats. What protects this industry? What protects these companies? So some of the things he said he's learned is having two or more moats is not better than having one. It's the strength of the moat, not the number of them. If a firm's reinvestment, ask if the firm's reinvestment is into the moat, and if that reinvestment is increasing profits. So that's a really exceptional question. So they're doing a lot of CapEx on their moat. Is that just to maintain it, or is that in reinvestment to actually increase the power of the moat? So he says Coca-Cola has a great moat. The problem is people aren't drinking sodas. Are there any sodas in here? There's not a single soda in here, is there? Rayon, is that a Coca-Cola product? Your water, is that Coca-Cola? I don't recognize it. Anybody have a Coca-Cola product in here? I don't think mine's just tap water. So yeah, 20 years ago, there would have been like 20 Coca-Cola bottles in this room. So do y'all drink Coke at all? Coke Zero? No, I cut back because it's supposedly bad for old people. So they have a problem. They're doing other stuff, right? Waters and teas, and especially what is their power, their monster drink? They have one, don't they? I can't remember the name of it. I tried one. It's the only time I've drunk something where I had a warning on the back that it could be bad for my health. So, so he says Coca-Cola has a strong moat, but it's a static one. It's not one that's, so they're reinvesting. That reinvestment is not to make them stronger. It's just to maintain where they are. Even if the moat is static, though, that can be profitable because those firms can have some pretty good cash flows. It may not be forever. I am reading the Motorand's book on life cycle of firms. It's like a 20-hour book, so it can take me a while. I'm like 3 hours into it. It's pretty good. He's a good writer. I wish he had narrated it because I'm used to his voice, and he's a pretty good reader, but he had someone else reading it. But it's interesting. So you kind of think about Coca-Cola. Their sodas are definitely on the downward, but they're doing other products. So he says just because the product is in the decline doesn't mean the firm is if they're buying other products that are on the way up. So, Coca-Cola is more than just Coke. So you have to kind of see what else they're doing. But just because they have a declining economic moat doesn't mean it doesn't have value. You can't value that and find a cheap stock. Firms should allocate we already talked about that. Their CapEx should be to maintain and grow and strengthen the moat. And what firm you're looking for, this is more papers 3 and 4. You want firms that are investing in their moat and profitability is increasing. They're getting more out of it. If you can find a firm like that, that's the best firm. That's an exceptional firm. So you can see this is really important. A lot of students don't do this. They just look at CapEx. Don't think of CapEx as one number. You got to ask what's in that number. Okay, they did $8 billion of CapEx last year. What was that? So Walmart did $8 billion CapEx. Was it to build new stores? Are they spending money on their website? Are they spending money on? You're starting to see Walmart trucks, aren't you? Driving around the city. That's huge. The first time I saw an Amazon truck, I was thinking, what in the world is that? So Amazon going to compete with FedEx and UPS? That seemed insane to me, but they're doing it. What is UPS saying? Let them have it. That's the least profitable part of our business. If they want to do that, let them have it. UPS says, fine, we'll let it go. But I would have thought that would have been scary for UPS and FedEx to see a bunch of Amazon trucks. Now y'all see more Walmart trucks. Now I'm seeing HEB trucks. That's a capital expenditure, right? They're buying these trucks and they have to have drivers, trained drivers. These businesses are changing. What does that mean? Is that increasing their profitability, or are they having to spend money just not to lose customers? That's why you want to assess that CapEx. What is it doing to their profitability? What some people like to do is, and this is a ratio I really, really loved, but looking at CapEx versus the change in CFO 5 years later. So as they increase their CapEx, did you see a resulting increase in cash from operations? If not, what are they spending their money on? What are they doing with that money? You want your CapEx to be adding to your profitability, not just keeping you from losing business. And so I worry about Walmart, Amazon, H-E-B, if they're just spending money because they have to, because the markets are changing, they're not really getting any more profitability. Moats do tend to be in certain areas, payment processors. Although I'll say, Weiss, I love Weiss. There's a really good business breakdown on Weiss. I don't know their ticker though. I don't know if it's that one. That's not it. I don't see it. I'd have to find it, but we use it in Costa Rica. It's so much cheaper, so much easier. Just beating up PayPal, beating up Western Union. It's just huge. I mean, their goal, if you listen to Business Breakdown, their goal is to be 90% cheaper than the competition. So payment processors, that's a big one, and that's huge because there's a lot of people sending money back to their home country all over the world. Some people are trying to do it with Bitcoin, which is a really dangerous way to do it, given how volatile that is. But a lot of people sending money back to their home country, and it's costing them a fortune. We also use PayPal for our charity. It is ridiculous how much they charge. It is so grossly overcharged. If someone says we want to send you $10,000, like, don't send it through PayPal. Mail me a check. I'll deposit it manually because I don't want to spend several $100s on that. So I hope there's not economic moats. I hope PayPal doesn't have an economic moat. PayPal is a firm I'd love to see go out of business because I just think they charge way too much. Business-to-business software like Oracle, those can have incredible protected moats. Investment market exchanges, those are really interesting. You look at the Chicago Board of Options Exchange, CBOE, they have an incredible economic moat that protects them just because they're known for options. That's what they do. They have that market somewhat cornered. So there are places that tend to lend themselves to economic moats. Here's another Connor Leonard, he was interviewed. What he talked about is the type of moats, that some moats are better than others. He talked about legacy moats. These are traditional moats, often as brand name. They don't really have great reinvestment opportunities. They're just trying to maintain that brand name, make sure their customers like them. Reinvestment moats, they're strong moats, but they require a lot of CapEx to maintain them. You got to build new buildings. You got to do a lot of stuff. And then his favorite is capital light compounders. These are the network effect moats, and they dominate a market, and there's very little reinvestment required. These are great company. He talked about some of these newsletters that go out and some certain things. He gives a few examples in this podcast that are quite interesting. That he shows you that, yeah, man, this is like the perfect business. If you can get it, they're going to be incredibly profitable, and no one's going to come in because what they're doing is so unique, and it doesn't cost them that much to keep it going. So you might look for some of these podcasts and listen to them. They're pretty interesting ones. I can't remember who's this. There's two podcasts I use. So that's economic moats. Definitely want to talk about economic moats in your third paper. It's possible your firm doesn't have one. So if you don't think your firm has one, what are you going to do then? I don't think, does Kohl's have an economic moat? Does Target have an economic moat? So don't feel like you have to produce one. You might say Target has some brand identity, so that might be there. But think about it. Banks, for the longest time, banks just had no economic moats. You could just go to any bank. So think about it with your firm. So it's quite possible your firm doesn't have one. Don't force one on them. Not every firm has one. Try ChatGPT. You want me to try one? So we'll try it. Oh, you want me to do Walmart? I was going to do Target. So let's try it. So how should I put it in ChatGPT? So ask it as a question. Can you do that with chapter two? Those target. Y'all want me to turn on the, if I can do it verbally. Oh, David's correcting my spellings. Thank you. He's thinking, yes, Target does have an economic moat, though it is considered moderate compared to companies with more entrenched competitive advantage. Target moat is based on brand loyalty and differentiation. It has carved out a niche by positioning itself as a higher end option compared to Walmart. Scale and distribution, Target operates a large scale, which gives, the stores themselves a little bit of a moat because they have those private label products. I don't know what the products are. Omni-channel retailing, I don't know how that'd be a moat, but because Walmart does all of that too, but anyway. Wow. All right, so our world has changed. Yeah, it's all there. So you can do that. Does my firm have an economic moat? You can't copy and paste it, but you can definitely get you some ideas from it. So pretty impressive. Yeah, so think about it with your firm. Don't force it, but at least try to research it a little bit. All right, what I want you to do tonight, before you can leave tonight, is I need a detailed plan for your team. Who's doing what on paper two? So you have an introduction, somewhat of a history, and the players of the industry. You have the Porter's five forces. You're definitely going to do buyer and supplier, maybe one other, maybe all five. And then you have a conclusion. You're going to do the generic strategies. You put that within the Porters. You have economic macro factors you got to do. You got to work that into the Porters as well. You got to have some economic factors that we're doing. I need to know what everybody's going to do. I need you to send that to me before you leave tonight. All right. So break up in your team and get that done. If you've already done it, you get to leave a little early. But all right. Any questions on what we're doing?
Would you like maybe